She told me she lost the rings in a yoga studio bathroom. That was the first thing that made me pause. Not panic, just pause. It wasn't what she said. It was how she looked when she said it. Not upset. Not even annoyed. Just bored, like she'd misplaced a pair of socks. I was in the kitchen making dinner, chicken thighs sizzling in the pan, the smell of garlic heavy in the air. She leaned on the doorway with her gym bag slung over her shoulder, scrolling on her phone. And without looking up she said, "Oh, by the way, I lost my rings." I remember turning off the burner like I needed silence to hear that again. "You, what?" She blinked slowly like I'd interrupted something more important. "Yeah. They must have slipped off during yoga. I took them off. I don't know. I'll call them tomorrow." She walked past me, dropped her bag by the stairs, and went upstairs. That was it. No stress. No urgency. She wasn't crying. She wasn't tearing the house apart looking for them. Just a flat statement and then nothing. I stared at the rings in the dish by the sink, the ones I always took off when doing dishes. Mine were still here. Hers were supposedly gone. The kitchen was quiet except for the ticking clock, and suddenly the smell of garlic made me nauseous. I didn't say anything else that night. I didn't ask if she called the studio. I didn't ask if she went back to look. I just let it sit. I told myself people lose things all the time. I told myself she was tired. I told myself anything I could think of to shut the door that had just opened in my mind. But then 2 weeks later, I borrowed her car. That was something I almost never did. Mine was in the shop and she tossed me the keys without looking up from her laptop. Her car was cleaner than mine. Always smelled like mint gum and some perfume I couldn't name. But when I opened the glove compartment looking for the insurance card, I saw something wedged in the corner. At first, I didn't know what I was looking at. Just a shiny, crumpled thing. I pulled it out and when I realized what it was, I dropped it like it burned me. Used. Folded. Still tied. I sat in the driver's seat with it on the passenger side floor. My ears started ringing. Not metaphorically, I mean literal ringing, like static rushing in from some other world. I stared at it for so long, someone walking past probably thought I was frozen. I didn't even touch the ignition. I just sat there, my hands in my lap, the world outside moving like a silent movie. Later that night, I asked her if anyone else had driven her car recently. She didn't look up from her phone. What? No. Why? No reason, I said. And then I hired a private investigator. I didn't confront her. I didn't scream. I didn't ask questions. I didn't accuse. I wanted the truth, yes, but I wanted it wrapped in irrefutable evidence. I wanted something no explanation could cover. Because the second she said, "What, like that?" as if the question itself was an inconvenience, I knew she had something to hide. And if I confronted her without proof, she'd twist it. She was good at that. Too good. I'd end up being the villain in my own story. I hired a man named Carson. Former cop. Quiet, smart, didn't blink too much. We met in a diner far from the city. He took notes without interrupting. Didn't raise his eyebrows. Didn't say things like, "Are you sure?" He just nodded and told me he'd be in touch. Took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of pretending everything was normal. 3 weeks of making coffee in the mornings, eating dinner in silence, hearing her laugh through the bathroom door while texting someone named Lena, who suddenly sent emojis with hearts now. 3 weeks of watching her leave the house in outfits she hadn't worn since our first year together. Her makeup sharper, her hair done for work meetings. Then Carson called. He didn't say much. Just asked if I was free that evening. I met him in the back of a parking lot behind a rundown strip mall. He handed me a manila envelope. It was so quiet I could hear the sound of the paper sliding out as I opened it. There were photos. A hotel parking lot. A man stepping out of her car. Her hand in his. The same hand that once wore the ring she said she lost. There were timestamps. There were kisses. There were moments I hadn't witnessed but now couldn't unsee. And suddenly I was breathing like I'd been sprinting. I looked up at Carson and said the only thing that made sense in that moment. "I want a lawyer. A good one. Someone who'll burn her entire act to the ground." He didn't ask why. He just nodded. I drove home in silence. And that night I didn't sleep. Not a second. Because tomorrow I wasn't going to ask questions. Tomorrow I was going to deliver a message. I waited until Sunday. She always slept in on Sundays. That morning, I sat at the kitchen table, Coffee gone cold in front of me, watching the hallway like it was a stage. I had the envelope beside me, closed but not sealed. My hands weren't shaking. I thought they would. I thought I'd feel rage or grief or something cinematic. But I felt nothing. Just an eerie calm, like my mind had slipped into some secret room and locked the door behind it. She came down the stairs barefoot, wrapped in a hoodie that wasn't mine, hair in a lazy bun, smelled like perfume she didn't own 2 months ago. She didn't look at me, just headed to the fridge and poured orange juice like we weren't on the edge of something irreversible. Then she sat across from me and finally looked up. "What?" she said. "No, good morning." No smile. Just that flat, tired glare. Like I'd interrupted something again. It was that tone, the tone people use with waiters who bring the wrong order. The tone that said I was an inconvenience. I slid the envelope across the table. She stared at it, then back at me. "What is this?" I didn't answer. I just waited. She pulled it open slowly, like she expected it to be a bill or junk mail. Her fingers hesitated when she saw the first photo. She didn't speak, didn't even breathe, I think. Just flipped through them one by one. I watched her pupils shift, watched the tension rise in her jaw. When she finished, she looked up with this expression I'll never forget. Not shock, not shame, annoyance. "You went through all this instead of just talking to me?" That was her first response. Not "I'm sorry." Not "it's not what it looks like." Not even denial. Just irritation. Like I'd embarrassed her in front of her reflection. "You lost the rings," I said quietly. She rolled her eyes. "Oh my God. This is about the rings?" "No," I said. "This is about the man who got into your car after the hotel. The one who held your hand while you laughed like a teenager. The one you took my car to go meet." She leaned back in the chair, arms crossed, like she was listening to bad news on the radio. "Are you done?" That was her next line. I swear on everything, those exact words. I stood up because sitting there started to feel like sinking. I walked to the sink, not really knowing why, and turned the faucet on, maybe just to hear something real. "I already talked to a lawyer," I said, still facing the sink. Silence behind me. For a moment, I thought she might cry, maybe try something soft. But instead, she laughed. Quietly, the kind of laugh you hear from someone who's already won. "Of course you did," she muttered. "You always did like playing the victim." That one hit. Not because it was true, but because she said it like she was bored. Like she'd already told the story to someone else, rehearsed this role of the misunderstood woman with a husband who didn't see her. I turned back around. She was on her phone again. "You're not even going to try?" I asked. She shrugged. "What do you want me to say, Jake? That I'm sorry? Fine. I'm sorry. Happy." "His name," I said. "What's his name?" She smirked. "Why? You gonna fight him or something?" That smirk. That smug little smile. That was when I realized I wasn't looking at someone who made a mistake. I was looking at someone who'd planned it, justified it, lived it, and didn't regret a damn second of it. I don't know how long it had been going on. Months? A year? Maybe more. But the way she looked at me in that moment told me she didn't care if I ever found out. She wanted me to, because then she wouldn't have to pretend. I didn't throw anything, didn't raise my voice. I just walked upstairs, packed a bag, took the keys to my old truck, and left. I stayed at a hotel that night, the cheap kind with faded carpets and walls too thin to sleep through. I lay on the bed with the lights off, phone on the nightstand, and stared at the ceiling. And then I laughed. Laughed so hard it echoed through the room like I was losing my mind. Because the private investigator was just the beginning. I hadn't told her about the lawyer's plan yet. And I hadn't told her about the other thing. The twist that even I didn't see coming. The lawyer's name was Dana Locke. She came recommended by Carson, the PI. I had expected someone older, someone with silver hair and a quiet, terrifying presence. Instead, I got Dana. Mid-30s. Sharp eyes. Spoke like every word was part of a closing argument. No small talk. No smiles. Just a question delivered without flinching. Do you want to hurt her in court? Or do you want to destroy her? That was the consultation. I told her everything, what I knew, what I saw, what I suspected. Dana took it all in without blinking, tapping her pen against the side of her tablet. Then she asked for everything I had. The photos, the timestamps, the car logs, even the damn hotel address. I gave her everything, and then she gave me her plan. She's sloppy, Dana said. That's good. Sloppy means careless. Careless means she didn't cover her tracks. I'll need phone records, financial statements, anything you have joint access to. You said she hasn't lawyered up yet. No, I said. She's still pretending she's the one being wronged. Dana nodded like she'd seen this movie 100 times. We'll file quietly. Hit her hard on the first move. You've been the stable income, right? I nodded. Good. We'll freeze joint assets before she realizes what's happening. No warning. No time to shuffle money. If she tries to claim she was emotionally neglected, we already have proof of infidelity. I'll get you the house, your share of the savings, and clean custody of your dog if you want him. I didn't answer that last part. I wasn't thinking about the dog. I was thinking about the voicemail I got that morning. From a number I didn't recognize. A woman's voice. Tight, urgent. You don't know me, but I think we need to talk. It's about her. It's not just what you think. I hadn't told Dana about that yet. Not because I didn't trust her, but because I didn't understand it. That call cracked something open. I thought I had the full picture. The photos. The car. The way she looked at me like I was wallpaper. But that voicemail, that voice said something else was waiting in the shadows. Something I hadn't even considered. I texted the number later that night. Just 4 words. Who are you really? She replied a minute later. Meet me tomorrow. 11 a.m., Café Verde. Come alone. No name. No details. Just the time and place. I didn't tell Dana. I didn't tell anyone. The next morning, I drove across the city to a part of town I hadn't been to in years. Café Verde sat tucked between a closed bookstore and a nail salon that smelled like acetone from across the sidewalk. I parked across the street and sat in the truck for 10 minutes before going in. Inside, the cafe was nearly empty. Quiet music. The smell of burnt espresso. And at a corner table, a woman in a navy coat looked up and gave me a half smile. She looked nervous. Early 30s, maybe? Hair tied back. No makeup. She had that look like someone who hadn't slept in days but was too scared to go home. You're Jake, she said, standing as I approached. I nodded. You left the voicemail. She nodded too. Then reached into her bag and slid a phone across the table toward me. Watch this, she whispered. I picked up the phone. She had a video queued. A hotel hallway. Grainy. Timestamped from 2 weeks ago. The camera angle was low, clearly from someone hiding. And then I saw her. My wife. In heels I'd never seen before. Knocking on a hotel door. Then a man opened it and it wasn't the one from the photos Carson gave me. This was someone else entirely. Older. Balding. Wearing a towel. He pulled her inside by the waist. And just before the door closed, I saw her laugh. I stared at the screen like it was lying to me. She's been with at least 3 that I know of, the woman across from me said. Her voice cracked. One of them was my husband. I looked up slowly. Who are you? She swallowed hard. Her hands were shaking. My name's Chloe, she said. I was stupid enough to trust her, too. Then she leaned in and said the sentence that rewrote the rules of the entire game. She's been planning something. Something with him. I think they're trying to set you up. For a second, everything around me vanished. The hum of the coffee machines. The clinking of spoons. Chloe's voice. All of it went silent. My mind stopped processing what she just said. It refused. Like it hit a wall too twisted to climb. But her eyes, those wide, sleepless eyes, were locked on mine, begging me to catch up. What do you mean, set me up? I asked. My voice came out low, colder than I expected. She pulled a folder out of her bag and placed it on the table. Inside were printed screenshots, texts, emails, calendar appointments. Everything highlighted, color-coded. Her fingers trembled as she flipped through them, pointing. She's been meeting with my husband. His name is Kyle. I confronted him when I saw the hotel charge. He cracked. Told me your wife, whatever her name is, was planning to leave you, but not until they got what they needed. I leaned in. Needed what? She met my gaze. Your signature. On a property deal. Something about a transfer. I blinked. That's not possible. Everything's in both our names. She nodded. That's what I thought. Until I saw this. She pulled out a photo. Grainy, printed from a security cam. It was my wife sitting in a bank office. Smiling. Signing papers. She forged your signature, Chloe whispered. They already submitted it. I stared at the image. At the way she sat. Back straight, hair perfect, that familiar smugness on her face. I remembered that blouse. She wore it the day she told me she had to run errands and vanished for 5 hours. I had chalked it up to her usual unpredictability. But now I realized every absence, every vague excuse had been a brick in a wall I didn't even know was being built around me. My stomach turned. If they push this through, Chloe continued, you'll lose the house. The investment account. Maybe more. I checked the names on the paperwork. They added Kyle as a trustee on the secondary title. It's legal if they get it past the bank and the county office. But if you catch it before it clears, they go down, I finished. She nodded. Hard. I sat back in the chair, heart pounding. My mind flashed back to every moment she'd asked me to sign something recently. A casual, oh, this is for the mortgage refinance. A random, just initial this real quick, babe. She knew I didn't check. She knew I trusted her at least enough to skim and scribble. I'd been walking through my own life blindfolded while she rearranged the furniture behind my back. And now she was trying to pull the rug. I looked at Chloe. Why help me? She hesitated. Because I was stupid. I let my husband convince me it was harmless. Just a fling. Just one mistake. But when I realized they were targeting you, using your name, your money, I couldn't let it slide. Not after everything. I nodded slowly. So what now? She leaned forward. I already talked to a friend at the bank. She stalled the paperwork. But not for long. You need to get ahead of this. Legally. Fast. My phone buzzed. It was a message from my wife. Where are you? I stared at the screen for a long time, then typed back. With someone you're going to hate. Then I looked at Chloe. You have a copy of everything? I asked. She nodded. Good, I said, standing. Now we go see my lawyer. As we left the cafe, my mind was a wildfire. Every memory was a new piece of evidence. Every lie she told was a thread unraveling from her perfect little tapestry. And somewhere deep in my gut, something dark settled in. She hadn't just cheated on me. She tried to erase me. And I wasn't just going to stop her. I was going to make her wish she'd never underestimated me. Dana's office sat on the 12th floor of a glass tower downtown, wrapped in the kind of silence that feels intentional. Everything about her space was minimalist and sharp. No photos, no clutter, just glass, steel, and precision. Chloe and I stepped into the conference room where Dana was already waiting. One eyebrow raised at the unexpected guest. I dropped the folder on the table. We've got a new layer, I said. Dana flipped through the contents while Chloe explained. She didn't interrupt. She didn't flinch. But when she got to the bank photo, her eyes narrowed. This changes everything, she said finally. Dana tapped her pen twice on the table, then looked at me. We're not dealing with infidelity anymore. We're dealing with fraud. Premeditated, multi-party fraud. Chloe nodded. They've already filed the documents. The only reason it hasn't gone through is because I pulled a favor. But I can't hold it forever. Dana stood. Okay, here's what we do. We file an emergency motion to freeze the asset in dispute, the house, on grounds of fraudulent activity. Then we subpoena the bank's surveillance footage and the forged documents. Once that's filed, we move up the divorce timeline. No negotiations. Straight to litigation. I exhaled slowly. This was war now? Dana looked at me. You said she doesn't know you have a lawyer yet, right? Correct. She thinks I just packed a bag and disappeared. Dana's lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. Good. That means we get to go first. She turned to Chloe. We'll need a sworn affidavit from you, including your husband's involvement. If he's linked on those documents, we can name him as a co-conspirator. Chloe didn't blink. I'll give you whatever you need. Dana nodded, grabbed her tablet, and started typing like a machine. You'll both hear from me within 24 hours. But Jake, whatever you do, don't talk to her until I give the green light. No texts. No calls. No confrontation. I nodded, but inside, my chest burned with the need to look her in the eyes and tell her she'd lost. That I knew everything. That her house of mirrors was crashing down. But I waited. And that night, I returned to the house. Not to move back in. To watch. I parked down the street, headlights off, engine idling. The windows glowed from inside, warm, soft, like any other night in any other life. But not this one. Not anymore. At 9:17 p.m., a car pulled into the driveway. Not hers. His. Kyle. I recognized him from the video Chloe showed me. Broad shoulders. Receding hairline. The kind of confidence that came from thinking you're untouchable. He stepped out of the car with takeout bags. Like this was normal. Like this was his home. The door opened. She stood there in one of my t-shirts, my shirt, and kissed him before he even crossed the threshold. I gripped the steering wheel so hard it creaked. They went inside. Lights dimmed. The house settled. And that's when I made the call. Dana answered on the second ring. I want you to file the motion first thing tomorrow, I said. I don't care what it costs. I want the house frozen. The accounts locked, and both their names in black ink on every damn page. She didn't ask why. She already knew. And then, before I hung up, I said something I hadn't planned. I'm going to walk back in there soon, I told her. But not to live. To do what? She asked. I stared at the glowing windows of the house I used to call home. To let her know she's not the one holding the pen anymore. The next morning came heavy with silence. Like the air itself was holding its breath. Dana filed the emergency motion at 8:02 a.m. By 9:13, the judge granted a temporary freeze on all marital assets. House, accounts, investments. Everything locked. The county clerk flagged the forged deed transfer, and the bank received a legal hold order. My wife and Kyle, wherever they were sipping their morning coffee, had no idea their little con was collapsing one signature at a time. And then Dana called me. She's going to find out within the hour, she said. Brace yourself. I didn't wait for her to call me. I walked into that house. I used my key, stepped into the entryway, and closed the door behind me like I was returning from a jog. She was in the kitchen, back to me on the phone with someone, her tone sharp, frustrated. No, I don't understand what you're saying. The account was accessible yesterday. What do you mean it's frozen? She turned, spotted me, and went silent. Her face went pale. Not scared, just calculating. Like a chess player realizing their opponent just took their queen in silence. I walked in slow, calm. Morning, I said. Everything okay with the bank? She ended the call without saying goodbye. What did you do? Her voice was low, clipped. I dropped the legal envelope on the island. Did you know forged documents carry real consequences? Or were you planning to disappear before the paperwork cleared? Her jaw clenched. You had no right. I cut her off. No right? You stole from me. You let that man into this house. You played me for a fool. And now you're shocked the mask ripped off before your little plan was finished. She laughed short, cruel. You really think you're the victim here? I was, I said, until this morning. Now, I'm the one with the lawyer, the evidence, the judge's signature. She blinked. You're bluffing. I pulled out my phone and played the video from Chloe's phone. Her, Kyle, the hallway, the laugh, the door closing, her face drained of color. I have sworn statements. I have timestamps. I have every dirty little footprint you thought you wiped away. Silence stretched between us. Then, slowly, her face shifted. The tears didn't come. Not even anger. Just cold fury. Like she was truly seeing me for the first time, not as a husband, but as a threat. You think you've won, she said. You have no idea what's coming. I smiled genuinely for the first time in weeks. I know exactly what's coming. You in court. With Kyle beside you. On the defense. She stepped toward me, voice rising. You think people are going to believe you? You think some little folder full of grainy photos is going to make you the hero? No, I said, but it makes you the liar. And that's enough. I turned to leave, but she grabbed my arm. You walk out that door, Jake, and it's war. I looked her dead in the eyes. No, I said. You declared war. I'm just making sure the battlefield's fair. And then I walked out. Calm. Quiet. She didn't follow. But Kyle did. Because not 10 minutes after I left, his car pulled up again. And this time I was waiting around the corner. With Chloe. And her camera. We sat 2 cars down, engine off, windows cracked, watching like ghosts from the edge of their kingdom. Kyle strolled up to the front door with that same cocky bounce in his step, holding what looked like a gym bag. He rang once. The door opened. She was still wearing my shirt. Chloe lifted the camera, steady hands despite everything. Her breath was calm, precise. She'd done this before. But I hadn't. I could barely stay still. Rage sat under my ribs like a furnace, steady, burning, but focused now. Controlled. The door shut behind them. Chloe zoomed in on the windows. Give it a few minutes, she said. I turned to her. What's in the bag? She tilted her head, expression unreadable. Don't know. But I bet it's not gym clothes. She was right. 30 minutes later, Kyle came out, alone. No bag. And something in his face had changed. He wasn't smiling anymore. He was pale. Rattled. Like someone who'd just been told a secret with consequences. What just happened in there? I muttered. We followed him. Chloe drove. She knew how to tail someone without being seen, which was both impressive and unsettling. Kyle drove fast, careless, his head twitching every few seconds like he expected someone to be following. He didn't stop at his house. He stopped at a lawyer's office. A different one. Chloe glanced at me. He's flipping. My gut twisted. You think he's going to turn on her? He might not have a choice. We parked a block away and watched him disappear inside. Chloe pulled out her phone and started typing. What are you doing? I asked. Sending the footage to Dana, she said. She'll want it. We might not know what was in that bag. But whatever it was, it made him panic. I stared at the law office door, thoughts racing. There was a shift happening. Something beneath the surface. She was playing more than just a long con. There was another layer. And Kyle, idiot that he was, had just realized he was standing on a trapdoor. Do you trust him? I asked. Chloe shook her head. No, but I trust panic. Panic makes people sloppy. We waited 30 more minutes. Then Kyle came out, phone to his ear, pacing. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in that meeting. Chloe snapped more photos. And then, out of nowhere, he said something loud enough for us to hear, even from the car. She lied. She told me he already signed. I didn't know it was forged. He was talking to someone. Maybe his lawyer. Maybe a friend. Maybe no one. But the sentence hit me like a hammer. She told him I had already signed. That meant Kyle hadn't forged the papers. She had. Alone. And he was just the tool. Another pawn. Another one of her sacrifices. She's playing him too, I whispered. Chloe nodded slowly. She's playing everyone. We stayed until Kyle drove away again. Then we headed back to Dana's office. She was already waiting. Hands steepled. Laptop open. Calm as ever. Chloe handed over the SD card from the camera. Dana plugged it in, watched a few seconds, and nodded. She's about to get blindsided from both sides, Dana said. And when he realizes he's disposable, he'll talk. I'll make sure of it. I looked out the window. The city was glowing with cold, indifferent light. What happens next? I asked. Dana turned to me, eyes like razors. Next, she said. Next we cut her exit routes. And then we squeeze. The squeeze came faster than I expected. 2 days later, Kyle's name appeared in the official court filings, listed as a co-defendant in the fraud case. Courtesy of Dana. He must have been blindsided. Probably thought he could sneak out the side door and let the storm hit her alone. But Dana was surgical. She didn't wait for him to come forward willingly. She made the pressure unbearable. And it worked. That evening, I got a call. Unknown number. Jake. The voice was shaky, like it hadn't slept. It's Kyle. I didn't say anything. I just let the silence stretch, make him sweat. I didn't know, he said quickly. She lied to me. She said you were okay with the deal. She even showed me a paper you supposedly signed. She said you just didn't want to deal with the bank stuff. I swear, man, I didn't know it was fake. You slept in my house, I said, voice flat. You kissed her in my kitchen. Forgive me if I don't care what you didn't know. I'm trying to make it right, he snapped. Look, I've got stuff. Messages, screenshots, recordings. She said things she shouldn't have. About you, about the plan. My pulse jumped. What kind of things? Enough that if you put it all together, it'll bury her. A beat of silence passed. Then he said, meet me, in person. No lawyers, just you and me. I agreed, against every bit of logic screaming in my head. I said yes. We met in a parking garage downtown. Rain was misting through the air, headlights smeared across the wet concrete. Kyle looked worse than before. Jacket wrinkled, hair a mess, eyes darting like a man being hunted. He handed me a flash drive. She said you'd get in the way, he muttered. That you were weak. Predictable. She had this whole timeline planned. Said if you didn't sign, she'd push you to the edge until you broke, then use that as ammo in court. I said nothing. Just stared at him. There's more, he added. She's talking to someone else. Not me. Not the guy in the photos either. A third man. Older. Wealthy. I don't know who. But she's planning something with him. That knocked the air out of my lungs. A third? How do you know? He shook his head. Caught her once. She got real nervous. Hid the phone. Wouldn't even say his name. I took the flash drive and walked away without another word. Back at Dana's office, we plugged it in. Inside were dozens of voice memos, screenshots, message logs. But one voice memo hit like a brick to the chest. It was her, recorded during a phone call, laughing. I'm not stupid, okay? Jake will fold. He always folds. He's soft. He still thinks I just made a mistake. Let him take his little moral high ground. I'll walk away with everything while he's still writing his sad little journal about loyalty. I didn't react. Dana did. She paused the audio and looked at me carefully. This isn't just leverage, she said. This is motive and manipulation. It'll fly in court. I nodded, numb. I want to push everything up, I said. File early. Burn the whole plan down now. Dana agreed. The hearing was moved. And the next morning, before she even knew what hit her, the sheriff's office arrived at the house. Served. Summoned. Named. She called me 15 minutes later, voice shaking for the first time since this all began. You blindsided me, she hissed. You taught me how, I said, and hung up. And just like that, the war went public. The court hearing was set for the following week. Dana told me it was early, but the judge saw sufficient grounds for urgency, especially after the evidence Kyle turned in. Fraud, deception, manipulation. It wasn't just a bitter divorce anymore. It was a legal siege. And my wife, she didn't know how to handle being on the defensive. The morning of the hearing, she showed up late. I watched from across the courtroom as she strutted in, trying to hold her composure, dressed like someone auditioning for pity. Dark blazer, no makeup, hair a mess. But the cracks were obvious. Her hands were twitchy. Her eyes darted toward Dana, then to me. She didn't know which way the hammer would fall, but she knew it was already in motion. Kyle was there too. He didn't look at her, didn't sit near her, just sat with his own lawyer, hunched forward like a man who realized he was just one step away from criminal charges. And Chloe, God bless her, showed up and sat in the back, silent witness to the wreckage. The judge opened the session. Dana rose and spoke first. It was clinical, sharp, lethal. Dana laid everything out with surgical precision, the falsified documents, the bank footage, the recording of her mocking me and admitting to manipulation, the financial transfers disguised as consulting expenses. She passed the flash drive to the clerk like it was a scalpel and then delivered the final cut. My client was not only misled, she said, he was actively targeted, set up to be drained, discarded, and blamed. This was not infidelity. This was a coordinated dismantling of trust, finances, and reputation. And we have the receipts. Then it was their turn. Her lawyer, young, overconfident, tried to spin it. Claimed emotional neglect, lack of affection, mental pressure, loneliness. All the usual buzzwords designed to scrape empathy from stone. But the judge didn't flinch. And when my wife finally took the stand, the courtroom went still. I didn't know what I expected. Denial? Tears? A final desperate speech? What I got was worse. She looked at me with venom in her eyes and said, "He's weak. That's why I did it. He never stood up to me. Not once. So I stopped waiting for him to be a man." There was a pause in the room. Thick, dense, unbreathable. Even her lawyer turned slightly, as if that line hadn't been rehearsed. She continued, her voice rising. "He's acting like a victim, but he was never present. I had to fight for every inch of attention, and when I stopped fighting, he just let go. I stayed still." Dana didn't rise to object. She didn't need to, because the judge was already writing. Then came Kyle's turn. He didn't say much. Just two things. She told me she forged the signature. And then, she promised we'd disappear with the money before he noticed. And that was the last nail. The judge recessed, said a ruling would come within the week. But the moment court adjourned, she stormed toward me in the hallway, eyes blazing, voice low and venomous. "You think you've won?" "No," I said. "I know I did. And I didn't even have to lie." She leaned in close so only I could hear. "I'm not done with you, Jake. Not by a long shot." I smiled, just barely. "You were done the minute you believed I wouldn't fight back." And then I walked away. She didn't follow. And behind me, Dana caught up and whispered, "She just realized the war she started has no exits left." The ruling came 3 days later. Dana called me personally. No assistant, no email. Just her voice, steady and sharp. "You got everything," she said. "The house, the accounts, full financial control until the full divorce settlement. She's restricted from touching a single dollar without court approval. Her claim for spousal support? Denied. Her fraud disqualified her. And the judge referred her forgery to the DA's office. That part's not in our hands anymore." I didn't speak at first. I just sat at the edge of the hotel bed where I'd been staying for the past month, phone in one hand, my life in the other. Everything I'd built. Everything she tried to walk away with. Back where it belonged. "She'll try to retaliate," Dana added. "She'll scream, maybe smear. But legally, she's cornered. And if Kyle cooperates with the DA, she may be looking at actual charges." I hung up. Sat there. Let the silence swell in the room. Then I stood, dressed, and for the first time since all this started, I walked back into my house. She was gone. Left before the ruling came down, probably sensed it. The place was quiet. Cold. Like it had been holding its breath too. Her perfume was fading from the walls. The pictures she hadn't taken down still hung, fake smiles in frozen moments. I pulled them all. Every one. Threw them in a box, shoved it in the garage. I stood in the living room where she laughed with other men. Where she plotted my ruin like it was a brunch conversation. And now it was just space. Air. Mine again. But it didn't feel like a victory. Not yet. Later that night, Chloe came by. She didn't say anything at first. Just stood in the entryway and looked around like she was afraid to cross some invisible line. "I heard about the ruling," she said finally. "He got served too. Kyle? The DA's looking at him now, but his lawyer's already begging for a deal." I nodded. "Let them eat each other." She smiled faintly. "You okay?" "No," I said honestly. "But I will be." She stepped inside, handed me a thumb drive. "What's this?" The man she was texting, the third one? I found him. My blood went cold. "Who is he?" "Not who," she said. "What?" Turns out the third man wasn't a lover. He was a real estate developer. And she had promised him a share of my property, my house, our investments, if he helped her flip the paperwork once the divorce started. She had planned 2 betrayals, one for love, one for money. And both failed. She didn't just fall. She tried to fly off the back of my life. And now she was plummeting with nothing to hold on to. The DA would take it from here. The civil part was over. My part? That ended when I locked the door, alone, and stood in my living room, breathing for the first time without lies in the air. What did I learn? That trust isn't fragile. It's sharp. And when it breaks, it cuts deep. That love can be twisted into something unrecognizable if you don't see the signs early. And that silence? Silence is where liars grow roots. But I also learned this: you don't fight fire with fire. You fight it with truth and patience and the coldest damn precision you've got. To anyone reading this, anyone feeling that ache in your chest, wondering if the gut feeling is just paranoia, check the glove box. Hire the PI. Listen to your silence. Because sometimes the woman in your bed is the one setting the fire beneath it. And when the smoke clears, you'll know exactly who she really was and who you are now.